When I left Christianity and fundamentalist Christian churches, I realized that the stories in the Bible, especially Jesus, is just an accumulation of existing, predating Christian or Judaism myths and an accumulation of different religious beliefs. So I did some studying in different religions and branches of ideologies. One thing I noticed is that a lot of the stories mentioned in the New Testament and even in the Old Testament are identical or so very close to existing mythologies. Jesus is not the only person that was born a virgin. There were many other religions that have virgin births, conceptions, and several actually have what we call identical to Christianity. The idea that a Savior is born of a virgin, dies for the sins of the world, and resurrects himself. That's not a belief that's just seen in Christianity. And if you've ever seen the movie Heretic, it's the one where the two Mormon girls go and visit this guy's house, who's feigning interest in joining the Mormon faith, or for those who know, the Church of Latter-day Saints. And he feigns interest in wanting to join. And Hugh Grant is the actor who plays this specific character. And he uses an analogy of monopoly boards to show that the three biggest religions in the world, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, are basically different but very similar. I call them varieties. I view religion like ice cream. There's tens of thousands of different versions of religion, but they all have similar themes, stories, and ideologies. I mean, come on, they don't call it Judeo-Christian values for nothing. There's a lot of Judaism in Christianity, and there's a lot of Christian and Jewish interactions within morality, history, theology, and church involvement. So, even though some religions are extremely different, the stories are very similar. And I've definitely noticed this. And it's like, why doesn't anyone else notice this? Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they all believe similar things. I mean, come on. Muslims and Christians, some of them still believe that Allah and Yahweh are the same God, just different. But even growing up during Christmas time, I was taught that 700 years before Jesus was born, Isaiah wrote several prophecies about Jesus. Not one time in 30 years did anyone ever say out loud anywhere that I've gone to, and I've been to 7 churches and 3 of the major denominations. Not one time did anyone ever ask the question, what if the prophecies were written after, not before? And if you look at a lot of the Bible, wasn't even put together for several hundred years after Jesus even left the earth, even if you believe he existed or not. They could have easily added or changed the way the prophecies in the Old Testament were written. So what they call prophecies, I call convenient. And I'm not saying that they changed and made up things to fit a narrative. I'm saying nobody can see the future. So any narrative that says that a prophet knew something before it happened is a lie. Nobody can see the future. Nobody is psychic. So for a man of God to claim that he can see the future is utter bullshit. Nobody can see the future for any reason. There's only one conclusion that you can come to. The prophecies had to have been added or written after they came true. It's like when an author writes a book and puts in certain red herrings and certain secrets into books that later turn out to be important. I mean, J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter, and she knew from the beginning how things were going to go. Same with Stranger Things and Lord of the Rings. What religious people call prophecies is just people writing a story, knowing the ending, and inserting what we call helpful prophecies that really aren't, but written after the fact, stuck in there before the prophecy comes true. When you take away even the option of having a supernatural involvement in a book, you realize that there's no way that any of the prophets from Jeremiah, Isaiah, Ezekiel knew anything that was going to happen. The prophecies had to have been written after Jesus was born, because there's no way anyone could know beforehand. It's utter ridiculousness. And yet, most Christians would say that Isaiah wrote these things 700 years before. And it's, I mean, you can't have it. There's no way. And a lot of the stories in the Bible, I mean, the story of Noah, every culture, from indigenous people to untouched people in the world, every culture, dead, extinct, existing, or completely separate from civilization, they all have a Noah story. Every single one of them. One of my favorite was the Sumerian version of Noah. I think the Epic of Gilgamesh is the technical term for it. My eldest brother is a professor of dead languages, and he can actually read the ancient Greek and Roman versions of the Epic of Gilgamesh. That was the Sumerian version of Noah's Ark. So you can imagine growing up and realizing what really goes on when it comes to these religions is utterly eye-opening. Some might call it horrifying. But no book has ever prophesied how the end of the world is going to happen, because the world isn't going to end. Not unless some Star Wars thing happens. But it's very true. No one can see the future. And whatever the Simpsons got right or wrong, they got lucky. They happened to do something that just happened to happen later. Simpsons don't predict nothing. Not one thing. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. The whole idea that Jesus was born of a virgin cannot happen. No one can be born of a virgin. Now, with modern technology, you can get pregnant as a virgin with IVF or certain medical assistance, but no, you cannot be a virgin, get pregnant through traditional means. It just can't happen. You cannot get pregnant by doing nothing. All by yourself, nothing going on. The idea that a virgin can fall pregnant is ludicrous. It's as impossible for a virgin to have a child as it is a man following a female leader in a traditional Baptist church. It's impossible. They just won't do it. It goes against everything they believe in. And the idea that a virgin would have a child is utter BS. It's another way that the patriarchy dehumanizes and objectifies women of pubescent age. The Virgin Mary was a young child. She was not a woman. She was a child. So when Christians and Catholics worship and idolize this woman, she was a child. She was historically under the age of 15. That's not something we should ever worship or idolize. Honestly, it should inspire something I would call as disgust. Any God that would use a child to bear a child is utterly devoid of morality. No decent person would want to have a child with someone under the age of 15. It's gross. But after going to therapy for many years, I realized that a lot of ideology found, especially in Christianity, is utterly revolting. It makes me extremely uncomfortable. You look at the books of the Bible that were named after women. The things women had to do is dehumanizing. And it's not something we should ever hold up as a decent way to live or even decent treatment of the most vulnerable sex. And if you want to learn more about different religions or belief systems that had similar mythology to Jesus, like the virgin birth, resurrection, and the Savior complex, Christianity, Horus worship, Zoroastrianism, Mithraism are just a few. Some of Christianity has been borrowed from polytheistic religions, and there are many 2nd and 3rd century AD philosophers that see parallels between Christian mythologies and pagan mythologies. And I found at least four versions of a virgin birth outside of Christianity. The idea that a virgin would have a son and he would die for humanity, there are many examples of these outside of Christianity. I mean, it is not a coincidence. There were many virgin saviors: Perseus, Romulus, Remus, Krishna, Horus, Mars, and several others I couldn't pronounce if I wanted to. There are dozens of male and female saviors that required a virgin birth. Many in Greek mythology, but even beyond that. Why is one virgin birth scenario deemed supernatural and others are not. And just believing that the prophets in the Old Testament foreknew and wrote prophecies, it just can't happen. Those prophecies were written after. Because that's the only way you would be able to prophesy something that comes to pass. It's just not possible. And when savior figures like Krishna and Buddha and Muhammad, I mean, even freaking Darth Vader was born a virgin and was deemed a savior until he went off the deep end. Does that make Darth Vader God? I'm sure there are some nerds out there that might think so. But no. The ideology of virginity that saved humanity is dehumanizing to women. She was a child. Nothing about the Christmas story is child-friendly. We have infant genocide, displacement. We have a girl who cannot consent to being pregnant or to marriage, but yet all that still happens to her. We have power struggles. And this is not a story that any adult should be even acknowledging around kids. Because biblical stories are atrocious versions of messed up morality. I wouldn't even call it morality. All religions are a variant of different religions. And if you look at a game of Monopoly, every religion and ideology is a variant or a different type of Monopoly game. But it's all Monopoly. It just has a different board, a different picture on the box, some few different rules, a combination of other games, but it's still all Monopoly. And at the end of the day, you wonder if there's so many versions, then maybe that's the reason why it's not true. Because if there's so many versions that are similar or entirely different, maybe the universe is telling us that it's not real. Because all religions offer the same thing. They either say you need to be fixed, you're not enough, you can gain something by doing this, but all religions are the same. They don't fix your problems. They help you maintain your life, your quality of existence. But they all offer the same thing. Because nobody that really exists on this planet wants to live a life not knowing all the answers. That's why religion was created. And if religion caused 7% of all the wars in humanity and is responsible, just Christianity alone has killed approximately 200 million people. You add up all the ideologies, the religions, the sects, the denominations, how many people they have killed, that would be a lot of people. And yeah, they're all similar, but different. In my opinion, one of the reasons I'm an atheist is because there are 40,000 Christian denominations, and they all think theirs is the only right way to live. And I don't want to waste my life believing in something where the stories, the events, the ideologies can be found in every other religion. And if there's 40,000 Christian denominations and hundreds of thousands of different belief systems outside of Christianity, or even including Christianity, the idea that anybody can believe that their religion is the one and only truth, you have to either be entirely sure, or you have to believe in some crazy stuff. There is no way that 1 out of 40,000 Christian denominations is the right one. And if they all believe that about themselves and not everyone else, it's just not something I want anything to do with. Because good beliefs don't divide people. They unite people. That's why I don't like MAGA and religion. Anything that divides people is bad. I want to be an atheist, where it doesn't matter what I believe and how I believe it. I don't want to lose my family, my friends, over a difference of one little hiccup in religion. And churches have split because they can't find middle ground. But at the end of the day, Christianity is a collection of myths, stories, and agenda. We have to decide if we're smart enough not to fall for it.